Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So today we have another round of localizer related drama. They are once again reaping what they have been sowing for many years because now a lot of Japanese publishers are turning to AI translations for their English translations of their work. Now in a week where a lot of people have been focusing on Kotaku and all the nonsense going on over there, and stay tuned for some updates regarding them in the next couple of days, localizers have stepped up to remind everyone how unlikable they are. So this picture right here really speaks volumes, okay? So you have two articles back to back from Bounding Into Comics. One week, you have Western localizers proudly bragging on social media about butchering translations. And then the next article is covering those same English localizers who are now mad that Japanese publishers are using AI instead of their services. It really speaks for itself. Again, reaping what you sow. So let's start with the first article here. It is titled, Western localizer proudly brags after butchering Sentai Filmworks' English localization of 2.5 Dimensional Seduction. Now that is the most localizer thing. I already believe them and I already have some ideas of who it might be. But first, let's talk about this anime. It is one that is a recent adaptation of a very raunchy series. And of course, we've already seen some censorship of this on its release to the West. We've also seen some butchering of the translations in the previews of this anime adaptation. And all of this makes a lot more sense when you realize who's in charge of this localization. It is, of course, the infamous localizer, Katrina. This is someone who is generally despised by a lot of anime and manga fans. She represents the worst of translators. She is someone who has, for many years, made mistranslations, and not just made mistranslations, also lectured people in the process and done it in a very smug and snarky way. And she has many different quotes that really tell everything that is wrong with localizers. She's made quotes where she has said that she tries to use her localizations as a way to censor what she deems as offensive content from the Japanese version of what she's localizing. She also labels basically anyone who criticizes her as a weeb. And on top of that, we can relate what's going on with this current Dimensional Seduction anime with what she was in charge of a year and a half ago when she was the localizer for the Inukai anime, which again, a very raunchy anime, and she felt it upon herself to not only disrespect the series and the fans of it, but she also yeeted in a bunch of Gen Z language, literally using yeet, by the way. And we're seeing that happen again with this new anime. People have found screenshots like this where she used language like Tig Biddies would ruin her whole vibe anyway. Yes, Tig Biddies for some reason. And she would actually justify this on social media. Someone asked, why Tig Biddies? Does he goof up the description on purpose in Japanese in a similar way too? Emoto makes sense. He's being an otaku weirdo, which we'll get back to that quote in a second. But Katrina responds by saying, yes, it's the end of a long rant about how much he loves flat-chested characters. In quotes, real otaku love characters with flat chests. And on top of that, we would see some more interesting decisions by Katrina, where we see this dialogue here where he refers to the character as his Emoto, where she replies saying, I don't want to be your goddamn sister, obviously changing Emoto to sister. And she would explain this on Twitter as well, and say that this was a calculated effort on her behalf. In fact, she would clarify her stance in the replies to this user who said, because Emoto is a word used by weebs to talk about the fantasy of having a little sister, it makes sense to me at least, where Katrina replies saying, correct. So obviously this is some attempt to shame people or demonize the word Emoto because in their headcanon, this is something used by the weebs. Once again, the weebs are striking again, causing Katrina some issues here. They live rent-free in her head. And by weebs, like I said, anyone who criticizes her or has the nerve to question her mistranslations. And on top of that, we would see another member of the industry in Katrina's replies, this localizer named Sarah Moon, who would proudly say that they have made mistranslations in their works for the exact same reason as Katrina, who replies saying, I love this. Yep, they're doing this in broad daylight, ladies and gentlemen. As I've always said, I'm not here trying to go to bat for these localizers, but I think a great piece of advice to them that I could give is to get off of social media, because I believe genuinely that a lot of the mistranslations localizers have made were discovered because they bragged about it on social media. If they just made the mistranslations and it went out there, a lot of people wouldn't notice it. But people notice it when the localizers responsible for the mistranslations go on to Twitter and brag about the fact that they did it. That's how a lot of mistranslations are discovered, and we're seeing these people do this in broad daylight because for years they did all this stuff with absolutely no blowback, so they really can't change their ways. Now that happened around July 22nd, and about a week later, we get this follow-up article from Bounding Into Comics titled this: English localizers furious over Japanese publisher Shogakukan's decision to use AI translations for light novels. In quotes, they don't care about the works they're ruining. How ironic. 1 week before this, these localizers were proudly bragging about their mistranslations, and then now they're upset because these Japanese publishers are replacing them with AI. Again, reaping what you have sown for many years. So as the article discusses here, Shogakukan recently announced a light novel app called Novellis, which will be using AI to translate various light novels and what have you, and they decided to use Mantra AI translation engine to help localize their books. And we've heard that name before. Now, a lot of anime-related accounts on Twitter were talking about these developments. However, they would share everything about this except a very crucial fact. In tweets like this, you will not see any mention that these AI translations are guided by humans. So the final product is reviewed by humans. So it's not just purely AI, it's actually being reviewed by humans at the end of the process to make sure everything is okay. However, leaving out that fact, a lot of people were jumping on this app, and mainly localizers. You see many members of the industry very upset at the prospect that they might be losing their jobs. And they ironically say things like this: when there are errors front and center marketing, I dread to think of what the bulk of it's going to turn out like. This is a disrespect for the medium and your audience. But hey, I'm sure Mantra's shareholders are happy. Imagine the audacity of these localizers saying that these AI translations are disrespecting the medium. Meanwhile, they've been disrespecting the medium for decades at this point and been getting away with it. Here's another quote saying, I'm asking all of you, the readers and audiences in the English-speaking sphere who are against AI and machine translations, to drive this Shogakukan app down to rock bottom and into the negatives. Make them regret their decisions to disrespect human art. Again, the irony. And of course, who else would comment on this but Katrina? It is expected. Anytime there is a localization discussion, she comes in to share her really just arrogant opinion on this. And again, ironically saying this, well, at least they were honest. They only care about cutting costs, not about getting readers good translations. Do you think the authors of the light novels would want their international fans reading garbled versions of the prose they worked so hard on? How disrespectful. The nerve of Katrina to say this once again. How disrespectful. The person who has been vandalizing anime and manga for years, the person who's been disrespecting original works, their creators, and also fans of those works for many years, is now calling this an act of disrespect, basically providing these translations to a Western audience that might not be getting it otherwise. And you would see Katrina coping pretty hard in some further replies, saying that, don't get me wrong, like any other tool, machine translation and AI have their uses, but you don't use a jackhammer to nail a painting to the wall, just like you shouldn't use these localizers to translate these very good pieces coming out of Japan. But again, this whole situation, right? These localizers act like fans are trying to frame AI as the best route for translations. It is not the best route. Of course, a proper human translation is the best, but nobody's going to feel bad for these localizers when they're replaced by AI when they've been disrespecting these works for decades. And down here, she'll also say that a lot of fan translation groups already publish machine translations and do them for free online, so you're giving international fans what they already have, which is kind of ironic because why are you complaining if people are already doing this? So it's okay if fans are doing it for free. She's essentially advocating for piracy right here, which is based, but not really her intent, I'm sure. And on top of that, she would go further saying, but these companies don't care about that. They care about their authors, their customers, or they don't care about their authors, their customers, or the works they're ruining with machine translation. All they care about at the end is money. And on top of that, she would say, fortunately, the English manga localization scene is still dedicated to hiring human translators, editors, and letterers to produce high quality localizations. And now we've got an awards ceremony to recognize the humans that bring authors' work into English with love and respect. That's so typical of localizers needing to pat themselves on the back with their own awards ceremony for the slop that they produce. But overall, like I said, you reap what you sow. Nobody feels sorry for these localizers, and it makes sense that some of these companies, these Japanese publishers, would want to replace them with AI because, like many other companies, you can draw parallels to Sweet Baby Inc. When people discover that certain people or consultation groups or what have you are involved with projects, they have inherent concerns. Fans have inherent concerns about the quality of that product because of the history of these localizers, whether it's in anime and manga or in the video game industry with companies like Sweet Baby Inc. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comments section down below, and I'll see you guys next time.